Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. Today we are going to be talking about Coca-Cola. So for anybody that's new here, my name is Funmi Owolabi. I'm the principal attorney at the Data Privacy Lawyer firm. So I want us to talk about cookies. So on other audits you've seen, I've always talked about, privacy policies, but cookies are also personal data under the data protection laws. So I want us to look on this channel and review cookie policies with other organizations, just to take a look at posture within the United States and see what type of provisions a typical cookie policy could have for businesses. So without further ado, we're going to be looking today at Coca-Cola. I don't think we need to take a look at the landing page. We're just going to take a look at the actual cookie policy. So the first thing I want to point out is we have been presented with a privacy preference center. That's really good. We can see here the types of cookies that Coca-Cola utilizes. So these are the ones they use to operate the website and show personalized content. As always, I always turn off all of the cookies that are not required. So a bit of insight into what this means. Sometimes organizations will add definitions of what they constitute to be analytics or advertising. You're going to see a lot of nuance when it comes to defining what constitutes analytics. So the most important thing is for businesses to be upfront and transparent about what it is they're collecting with regards to personal data. So if they provide a definition of what constitutes analytics for their business, then it can be seen that they're being transparent about what they believe to be analytics and conveying that to their consumers. So for this particular banner, we haven't actually been presented with what an analytic cookie is, but I'm pretty sure when we look at the cookie policy, we will. And then you can see here that there are necessary cookies. This actually allows the website to function. I've seen a lot of variance with businesses that deem certain cookies as necessary when actually they're considered analytics. I think businesses should be very careful about what they consider to be necessary, because if you're using analytical cookies to operate the website, you need to be able to make a distinction between what is truly necessary. So I'm going to confirm my choices. Let's take a look at the cookie policy. The first thing that I saw when I logged on here was this was last updated October 2021. Let me tell you my thoughts on this. It may be that the Coca-Cola company cookies have not changed since this date. But from what I understand about businesses, how they're constantly evolving, how they're constantly introducing new technologies, personally, I feel like cookie policies should be updated on a similar basis as the privacy policies. Why? Because these are personal data. Cookies are personal data. And the reason they're personal data is because they identify you as an individual. They're stored on your web browser. So on your specific whatever device that you're using, cookies are stored on your web browser. So ultimately, organizations, particularly when it comes to personalizing content, they're able to identify that, hey, this person has clicked on this website 10 times. So it seems like they like this type of content. Let's continue sending them that type of content. So I'm pretty sure that the Coca-Cola's privacy policy has likely been updated since October 2021. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the changes in the law mean that how an organization treats personal data has to change and update too. So even if Coca-Cola's cookies have not changed since October 2021, the laws have changed and the treatment of personal data has changed and the requirements and obligations of a business have changed. So this really should be updated on an annual basis, same as the privacy policy. When you use our website, mobile app and online services, we may store cookies on your web browser. Other third parties you choose to visit may do the same. Now this is very interesting, this section. So what Coca-Cola is basically saying is that there are third parties that they potentially work with that also utilize cookies on the site. That's what they're basically giving you notice to. Now, a lot of organizations that are seeking privacy counsel, usually when they talk to their privacy counsel, having third-party cookies on your site can be problematic at times. That really does depend on, one, how you structure any of the agreements that you have with these third parties. Sometimes these third parties will use boilerplate templates that they have on their website, like terms and conditions, which generally are insufficient with protecting personal data. It won't capture the personal data situation. It will capture general usage. Businesses need to be very careful about reviewing the contracts they have with these third parties that facilitate or provide any type of cookies on the business's site. Because what they're referring to here is the third parties have cookies related to Coca-Cola's site, not for the other sites. Okay, this cookie policy explains what a cookie is, how you can manage your cookies, and what kind of cookies may be on our site. Now, I have something to say about the explanation related to a cookie. Different data protection laws are going to define a cookie differently. Be very careful about the types of technologies that your business may be considering utilizing on the site, because it could constitute a cookie. That's why it's so important to understand the definitions for the geography where you provide services. Cookies are small pieces of text. They are provided by most websites and stored by your browser. Okay, so it's really good. I will say one thing that I do like is I feel like the tone of this cookie policy is appropriate for the audience. The audience here for cookie policy is, consumers of Coca-Cola products. And one thing we've talked about on this channel many times is when you as a business are working on these public-facing external documents, make sure that the tone is appropriate for the audience that you're trying to educate. Because you're trying to give notice to consumers of Coca-Cola products. You're not trying to give notice to other legal counsel or other lawyers. It's for people that consume your products. So make sure that you have things like definitions. So that's really excellent. Now let's get to this. First-party cookies and third-party cookies. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but cookies can be first-party or third-party. Now they define what they consider to be first-party. A first-party cookie is one that you receive directly from the Coca-Cola company. A third-party cookie is one that you have received from another party, such as Google or Facebook. We do not control what third parties do on other sites. Okay. However, we may work with certain third-party providers such as Google or Facebook to permit their cookies. So this is the section I really wanted to talk about. This is what they're alluding to at the top, right? When they're talking about allowing these certain third-party providers to permit their cookies to function through the site so we can learn more about your web experience, what they're saying is that there are certain cookies that are facilitated by Google or Facebook, and they are in agreement with these third-party providers about cookies that they permit. Now, what constitutes permit on the agreement needs to be strictly regulated by businesses, because sometimes there aren't enough restrictions on the third parties in how they can use the cookies subsequently, during, or at the creation or the beginning of the engagement. That's really important. Make sure that you as a business are really looking at the terms associated with having any third-party providers and your permissions related to the cookies that you allow them to place on your site. I'm just going to quickly scroll down. Persistent and session cookies. A persistent cookie is a cookie that's stored by the web browser on your device until it expires or you delete it. Now, this is very interesting. What this means is there are certain cookies that potentially could stay on your site or stay on your web browser indefinitely. And that's very problematic in data protection, because no personal data should be retained indefinitely. There should always be an expiration date. I think it's really important for organizations, if they're going to make this type of disclosure, they should make sure that it's very easy for consumers to, one, know how to delete it. Because let's be honest, most of us use our laptops and we've been using them for a long time, and we haven't specifically gone in and been like, oh, there's a persistent cookie on my web browser, I need to go in and delete it. Most people are not doing that. And what that means is there is a potential for that cookie to remain on your web browser indefinitely. So make sure that you are being clear to consumers about how they can go in and delete it. Unless it expires, it remains there. That's what they mean by persistent. The expiration of a persistent cookie is determined by the creator of the cookies and can be upon a certain date or after a length of session time has passed. This means that for the cookie's entire lifespan, its information will be transmitted to the creator server every time the user visits the website that it belongs to or another website configured to check that cookie. That's interesting. Fortunately, Coca-Cola has put some information here about how do you manage the cookies, so that's really excellent. If you're a business and you're considering drafting a cookie policy, make sure you always tell the consumers how they can manage the cookies. And they've also put, the different browsers. That's really very good. I am surprised though that this was last updated 2021, because what Coca-Cola's done is they've actually listed their cookies. My question is this still consistent with 2025? And that's a question that they would have to ask themselves. Is this still consistent with 2025? And has this changed at all in that time? Let's be honest, it's likely that some of this stuff has changed, because what happens is businesses change their agreements with vendors all the time. They change the type of business that they conduct as it relates to personal data, and they find new vendors that are going to provide them easier solutions as it pertains to their site. So that would be a little bit of opinion that I have about reviewing this. So I think all in all, that's really good. Contacting us, if you have any further questions, please contact us by calling this number. I think it would also be useful to have an email address here or a contact form specifically. so that individuals can manage their cookie preferences. I will say that we were presented with a cookie banner, so that's really good. So all in all, I think it's really important for businesses to, one, have a cookie policy at all, and two, maintain the same level of transparency and notice that you have with your privacy policy. A lot of organizations now do have privacy policies, which is good, but not many of them do have cookie policies. So I wanted to address this because it is personal data and it's something that we handle at the Data Privacy Lawyer. So if you are looking for counsel related to how your website drafts, creates, or updates this cookie policy, take a look at the description below and I would love to work with you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in another one.